Since the release of IK Multimedia's incredible little Tonex Pedal last week, I've been receiving a lot of questions concerning what it can and cannot do. And I've done some videos on certain topics already, and a lot of folks have told me they've been very helpful. But I do want to address one question I've been getting a lot, and that is the interaction with Amplitube. Now, if you own Tonex, we can open up our Tonex tone models within Amplitube 5, and that's great. The problem being is that somebody who has Tonex Pedal that maybe wants to take their Amplitube 5 amp sounds and load it into that pedal, that's where we run into an issue. That is not possible. Amplitube 5 presets are not compatible with Tonex software or Tonex Pedal. We can open up Tonex tone models, not presets, only tone models within Amplitube 5. So that leaves a problem for folks who are users of Amplitube 5 that maybe have a lot of their tones on there and want to utilize some of those amp tones live. But is there a way around this? Well, it's interesting because when we purchase Tonex Pedal, it includes not only a copy of Tonex Maxed software, where we could create new amp tones with the included tone models, or you could download some free tone models from ToneNet. I have my link to my ToneNet page down in the description below. Or you can purchase tone models from a third-party seller like myself who has some, what I feel are great tone models up on my website, and that link is also below. But what if we just really had some great Amplitube 5 tones and we wanted to get them on our Tonex Pedal? Is it possible? Well, yes it is, but we would treat it just like we would treat modeling an amplifier. I have this amazing Morgan Dual 20 amp that I have sitting next to me that I've already modeled, and I have that tone model bundle available up on my website. So as I said, we would treat it just like a normal amplifier, and I'm going to take you through today how we can actually capture our Amplitube 5 tones so we can load them onto Tonex Pedal. Since we have Amplitube 5 included when we purchase Tonex Pedal, this could be a very useful thing. Now, I will be using my audio interface and the Tonex Capture Box. Now, the Tonex Capture Box is not a necessity, but it does make life a lot easier. Today, I'm just going to be simply using it as a reamp box. There's a lot of reamp boxes on the market. A lot of you will have one already. So if you have an audio interface with the appropriate number of inputs and outputs, and I will be using my Focusrite Claret Plus 4 pre for that today, which has 8 inputs and 4 line outputs, so it's going to do the job fine. I'm going to be utilizing Tonex Capture as my reamp box, and we're going to capture our Amplitube 5 tone and then turn it into a Tonex tone model so that we could load this onto Tonex Pedal. Let's dive over to the software and get started. So there's a few things you're going to have to do here as far as setup goes, and this is going to be rather important. First thing, let's come over to Tonex. Now, before we jump into the Modeler tab, we're going to come up to our little settings bar here, our little hamburger settings tab, and we're going to make sure our audio settings are correct. So I have this assigned to my Focusrite USB ASIO drivers, so that is accessing my Focusrite Claret Plus 4 pre. I have my instrument input as 1, that's where my guitar is plugged into, and I'm monitoring this out my normal 1-2, which is playing back on my IK Multimedia iLoud Precision monitors. So that's fine, we're all good to go there. Now, I have my Amplitube 5 open here. Now, I haven't really worked on a preset here, I just loaded it up with what came up, the Brit 8000. I don't know if I tweaked anything at all here, I may have just messed around a little bit with the mics, but whatever. It's the point isn't how great this preset sounds or doesn't sound. It's just to see if we can capture it. So one thing we're going to want to do is make sure that we're only capturing amp sounds. We do not want to be trying to capture reverbs or delays. Tonex does not capture those. We also would want to make sure that we keep this mono. So the stereo room mics, we'd want to mute those. That's not going to be captured properly. We'd want to pan, if we're going to use 2 mics or 1 mic, we want to make sure they're just panned up the center. We don't need to pan them out at all. But we can get our tone set here balanced to however we want it to sound. All right, so the important thing we're going to have to do in Amplitube now is come up to our settings in Amplitube and take a look at our audio settings here. Now, you'll notice that I have both Tonex and Amplitube set to the same audio driver, the same audio interface. That was my big question, is whether I was going to actually be able to do that. And it turns out I can, and it's working fine. So your mileage may vary depending on your system and your audio interface, but for now, I'm able to utilize the same Focusrite audio interface on both Tonex and on Amplitube. So what I've done is I've set the input device to input 2 on both the left and right channel because I just want a mono signal coming into Amplitube. Now, you might be wondering where that's coming from. Well, as I mentioned before, I am going to be setting Tonex to send out of my line output 3 into the Tonex capture box, which is going to act as my reamp box. And that will be converting the line level signal to an instrument level, which will then come in on input 2 on the Focusrite Claret Plus, which I have set to instrument level. So we'd want to return that to an instrument level, so that the Amplitube 5 software is seeing that guitar signal, which are going to be the test tones that Tonex sends to them. So once it gets in here to the Amplitube chain we have set up, we'll process it, but then we have to send it out. And I've chosen output number 4, mostly because that was just a free output on my Focusrite Claret audio interface. Now, the interesting thing is I'm going to have to actually physically take a cable out of my 4th line output, and I am inserting that into my 4th line input on the same audio interface. So I'm creating a loop within the same interface. So output 4 is going to be the processed Amplitube signal, which is coming back out and feeding back in to input 4 on the Focusrite audio interface. Now, you want to make sure your levels are turned down and whatnot, just in case you hook things up wrong. You don't want some crazy feedback loop to go nuts. So that's my settings here. Obviously, your settings are going to differ depending on what interfaces you're using and if you even have enough ins and outs to do this. But for now, this is what's going to work for me. So I'm going to come out of this. Now, we can now start the modeling process here within Tonex. So I come over to my modeling tab. I'm going to select guitar. It's an amp and a cab. Now, here's my setup here. Just to reiterate what I've already said, what we have here is my guitar is plugged into input 1 on the Claret Plus 4 pre, and it's coming out output 3, sending to my reamp box, in this case, the Tonex Capture, which is then feeding into my amp. But since my amp is in the computer, as I've mentioned already, I'm plugging into instrument input 2, and I've assigned that as the input of Amplitube 5. So that's good to go. Now, we are obviously not utilizing microphones in any way, shape, or form. We simply have this loop coming back out and feeding back into the same audio interface. So we're going to utilize microphone 1 as our input, but even though it has nothing to do with microphones. So if you notice, microphone 1 is going into input 4. And that's what I had mentioned to you. The output of Amplitube 5 is on line out 4, which I have a cable connecting and looping right back into input 4. So basically, we have our guitar and Tonex sending out through the capture box into Amplitube 5 on input 2, back out of the audio interface on output 4, and back into input 4, so that Tonex can capture this. And we will be monitoring all of this on output 1 and 2, which we already set up within Tonex. I hope that was clear. Wow, it's kind of confusing because we have, microphone 1, microphone 2. Ignore microphone 2. We want to mute that, get that right out of the signal chain. We're going to only utilize microphone 1. All right, so everything's set up. We're going to hit next. We can check our instrument input level. I've already done that. I've already set any analog attenuation I needed to. Now, here we have microphone 2, which we said we don't want. I'm going to mute that. I don't want that on. I'm also going to rotate my mic blend over to mic 1 because this is where we want the signal, mic input 1. So we're now ready to maybe audition this. So let's just grab a little piece of the demo clips that we have available here. Now this is where we're going to be able to adjust our amplitude tone. I could move mics around. I can do whatever I want with this. I could come in and I could tweak the amplifier. It's sounding not too bad to me, so let's just leave that. But obviously you could tweak that however you wanted to. We now have to make sure the level coming in is appropriate. So I'm going to come over to my input gain on line 4 and adjust that. Seems like we have a good acceptable signal there. Now we start our process of capturing. So we're now going to do the capture. This is going to take 5 minutes. I'm obviously not going to make you listen to all of it, but here we go. All right, so there you have it. It finished its capturing process. We now move to the next step, and I'm just going to, for time's sake, use the default accuracy level. A lot of times I will use the advanced. This should be done in about 3 minutes on my system, so let's get started with that. And just like that, a few minutes later, our tone model is complete. But what are the results like? Well, let's hit next and see what happens. So again, it reiterates the routing we have just to make sure everything is good. This is what I have. I'm going to hit next to move on. Now we can audition the real rig versus the tone model. So here is the real rig. I'm just going to use one of the sources we have here. Let's go down to solo. Now let's move over to the tone model. And then I will play them again and A/B them back and forth so you can hear them back to back. Now I'll play it again and I'll go back and forth between the real rig and the tone model. So I don't know about you, there might be the slightest difference there. I did bring the gain up a little bit just to get things matched. This is a really nice feature that we have when we are doing these tone model captures. I think it's really close and probably good enough. Let's leave it there. We'll go next. We'll pick a skin for our new capture, and let's maybe go with this one here that looks similar to the Marshall amp we're playing. And I can come over here and I can say Amplitube, let's say British 8000, and we'll just only put the things in here. So we will say that this is a JCM 800, even though it's really not. The character is drive. Let's put the cab name in here. Let's just put, I wish I could type, Marshall, and we'll say that it is a 4x12. Obviously, we can add more information in here as we want. Now, I can grab my new model. It's right here. I can grab my guitar and audition this model. And I have a pretty cool Marshall tone. Now, if I really am happy with that, I can come over to my librarian and I could pick a spot on my Tonex pedal, which is hooked up, and I can drag and drop it in there, overwrite what I'm putting it onto, and my Tonex pedal is set up on bank 7, preset A, for what I just captured off of Amplitube. All right, so what do you guys think? Was that of any use to anybody? I know that a lot of folks are going to say, what in the world are you capturing another digital modeler for? And I completely agree. One thing I do want to make perfectly clear is any of the models that I am offering, I am not doing this on. I don't really think this is a great idea. I would never capture anything off my Helix. I would never capture anything off of Amplitube or any other modeler. I have real amps in the studio here. You can probably see back there, I got a nice Fender Deluxe setup. I've got some Marshalls behind me. I've got this great Morgan amp. I have some more coming in the near future. So a lot of great amps and a lot of great cabs. I've got vintage 30 cabs, greenback cabs, some cabs with Jensens in them. So I have a lot of great gear here with great mic preamps and great microphones. So that's how I choose to do my captures, because I think folks really want the real thing. What I was doing this video about is to satisfy that question I've been getting where people go, what about this Amplitube tone that I have already? I want to use that in Tonex Pedal, but I can't. Well, the interesting thing is when you get Tonex Pedal, you get Tonex Max software. You also get Amplitube 5. So if you came up with some tones and you wanted for your own purpose to capture those in a way that you could load them on and maybe use them live in a very convenient way with Tonex Pedal, this is a way you can do it. You're going to need, as I've already mentioned, an audio interface with enough inputs and outputs and routing ability, and you're also going to need a reamp box. I was using the Tonex Capture box. It's an amazing unit, does the job great. I was actually able to get rid of my old reamp box when I got the Tonex Capture. I'm super happy with it. I hope that was helpful. At the bare minimum, I hope it was enjoyable to kind of see another aspect of what we can do with Tonex, Amplitube 5, and Tonex Pedal and Tonex Capture. And I hope maybe that sparks some interest in some folks experimenting on their own. So thanks so much for tuning in. Please like the video, share it with anybody you think would get some use or enjoyment out of watching it. Also, please subscribe to the channel, hit the little bell notification to get notified when I put new content out. I'll be back really soon with some more. Thank you guys again so much for sharing your time with me. Ciao for now.